Hello, I'm DK Ross now. Welcome to the TTT News Special. Now, our guest is an intuitive artist who has been drawing and painting since the age of 4. Her name is Kayla Alexander, and she joins us now to describe her work and the process. How are you doing, Kayla?
Hi, I'm doing very, very well. And you?
I'm all right, thank you. Very happy to be speaking with you. And the first thing I want to ask you, though, is what is the inspiration behind your art?
Well, it's so many things, but mainly the Caribbean lifestyle. That's not through a tourist gaze, but from the eyes of a Caribbean person, an islander, an actual native to the Caribbean, as well as the beauty of Black women and the beauty of nature. So those are my three inspirations.
And how easy is it to do that? Because sometimes it seems as though the easier thing is to just kind of fall into, okay, well, this is what somebody's doing, all right, well, let me do that, or these kind of stereotypes. Is that something that you have to wrestle with, or is just you just don't bother with it?
Actually, it is something that I have to wrestle with in terms of like the themes. Sometimes I have to remind myself that I don't have to create art that everybody else expects me to create. So, all people from the Caribbean, they tend to paint, the beach and things through like a tourist gaze. So you paint it in a way that if somebody from another country come, they'll be like, oh wow, it's like a souvenir of the islands, and let me take this with me. And it was really hard to get into the space where I was being very self-expressive with my art instead of painting, what others expected me to paint.
Now, in terms of that self-expression, though, you get inspiration, or there's inspiration behind your art. Does your art inspire you? Or should I, or even before we get to that question, what is it about art that inspires you?
Basically everything. It's the fact that anyone can create and make art. So to me, and I believe that anything that you do with intention is a form of art. And I started painting at a very young age because I wanted to create scenes that I envision. So for me, it's about bringing my ideas and my headspace to reality.
Now, I like the fact that you talk a little bit about your background in terms of why it is you started at the tender age that you did. But at the same time, you're still going. Sometimes many of us have artists within us, have creative energy within us, and it might be scribbling on walls or in copy books, but we don't always allow that artist within us to live, to survive, to thrive. What is it that was able to help sustain that creative within you to move from the age of 4 to where you are now?
Definitely my parents and my family, my mom especially, from the time they started noticing that I love to paint my own cityscapes to have my dolls play in, they were like, okay, let's get her some art supplies. Let's enroll her in a little art class. So it was definitely my parents and definitely my mom. She encouraged me to, choose a career path in the arts. I was never told from my parents that, by my parents that I couldn't be an artist or I couldn't pursue the arts. While it is very common, like I heard growing up, why would you want to do art? You have such good grades, you get A's and, you could be a doctor or a lawyer. And I met a lot of people that just didn't really understand how artists could not be struggling. We have this idea that, to be an artist is to struggle, but I disagree.
And you just kicked my next question out of the way because I was going to ask about your support network. Because one of the things that I've, in conversation with other artists, is either they have a very strong support network or they just draw this font of strength from within themselves and say, I don't care about nobody, this is what I need to do. So in terms of saying, okay, well, you have that support network and your mom is there, and as opposed to saying, okay, well, stop doing that, or they bought the resources that you would need. And I believe from 4 to 12, doing what you're doing, but at 12 you started with acrylics. And that makes me want to ask about the medium that you use, or is there one, is there more? What is that like?
So I always was very traditional with my subjects and my mediums. So I started with watercolor, from drawing to watercolor. But because watercolor was so, watercolor, it moves around the page, it's very hard to control. I moved immediately to acrylics. I really like how I could see rigid the form is. And my style is quite um, detailed, not very lax, not very loose. So I found a lot of comfort in the acrylic. It dries quickly. As soon as I lay it down, that's how it is. I could get into tiny corners with it, doesn't really drip around. But I have been experimenting with oils recently, and I use a lot of different tools to create my paintings. I use string sometimes, bubble wrap, different things that I could apply the paint on. But in terms of mediums, I really stick to acrylic on canvas or pencils, drawings. My roots, I started drawing from the ages of 4. And yeah, so I really stick to acrylics.
And what is your process like though? In the sense that you go and you see a scene or you find something that inspires you and you take a little time with it, or you start going one time, or and is it something that you do over a period of time, like you go through it a little bit, then it takes some time, or you just dive in, people can't get you out? What is your process like?
Well, it's a little bit of both. So I usually get inspired through the internet, through seeing other artists. Sometimes just simple images from others. It could be their own selfie, and I'm like, wow, such a great setup, such a good form. The human face in this area looks very, in this picture looks, it's a different feature that I haven't seen before, different emotion. So from that, I move on to sketches. So I start sketching out different versions of a piece. And I like to work on the composition, making sure that, I have some strong lines in certain areas, making sure I have like a focal point at times. I don't really stick to like the laws or the rules of composition unless I think it's appropriate for the image. And I come back to it takes days sometimes. And then when I start to paint, you can't get me out unless I have like very specific goals set out for each painting. So for one painting, I might say, okay, in 2 hours, I will finish the face. And then tomorrow, in 2 hours, I will finish the background. Normally, it's way more than 2 hours, but that's how I usually plan it out. That's usually my process. But with the very rare times where I'll sit down, get an idea, and just sketch and paint, it does happen, but it's very, very rare. I like to be very methodical with my process.
And on this point, we take a short break. When we come back, we continue speaking with Kayla Alexander about her work, her process, and her art. Stay with us. Welcome back. We are speaking with Kayla Alexander, an artist, intuitive artist. And from that is some. Just before we took the break, Kayla, when you were speaking about your process, you said there's sometimes you will stay true to certain rules in terms of composition, and sometimes you just dash it a bush. But and that leads to the question: how much of it is some of the things that you would have learned in class or via the internet, and how much of your process is you?
I say it's 80% me and 20%. Actually, no. I learned a lot in my 2 years of art for CSEC at school. And with that, learning how to compose, it really changed how my art looked. I learned so much technique. I really thank my teachers for that. But I really struggled with keeping with the rules of art, especially when it came to composition. I always wanted to experiment with surrealism and doing very unconventional compositions. And I think I still haven't really delved into it with my first collection, but with this new collection, I've been, shaking it up a little bit. But I say it's both, it's combined. I think most of it is just me doing my own thing. But when it comes to like planning and like where exactly I put certain things, I think that's where the art training and the art education comes in.
All right, and
Yeah.
just before we dive into your work in terms of the series, I want to ask a question though. What is synesthesia and what part does it play in your work?
Well, synesthesia is basically people experience synesthesia when, and this is usually the case by a lot of artists, a lot of musicians, where they attribute colors, tastes, and textures to things that don't have any color, taste, or texture. So an example would be a lot of famous musicians, they can hear, smell, and see the color of certain notes. So for me, it kind of manifested in certain days will be a different color for me, and especially people. So when I look at somebody, my brain usually assigns them a color and a texture, and it sounds very weird, but apparently it's kind of common. I had a couple friends with the same, you know, thing. They would assign colors to a feeling, or they'd eat a piece of cake and be like, this feels pink. And I would identify with that. And I really wanted to showcase that with my next collection, showing different emotions and the colors and the textures that I resonate with when I feel them and see them in other people.
I don't necessarily think it feels weird. I think people don't necessarily talk about it all the time in the same way, but at the same time, you can hear people saying, okay, well, I feel blue, or that person make me see red. And then you
Yeah.
even have the idea of looking at auras, and different auras would have different manifestations, and part of that manifestation would be color. But you've spoken about it twice, so I don't want you to talk about it a third time without us actually getting and diving into your collection. What is your collection about? Where is it accessible? And there's also a website that you have. So give us some information about those things, thanks.
My next collection will be entitled Colors, and it's basically, as I mentioned before, different emotions and how they resonate with me, and the colors and the textures that I see them with. Right behind me, I have one. This one right here, it's entitled Bliss. So this is how I see and interpret the feeling of bliss. Lots of pinks, lots of texture, and with that, I decided to encompass and showcase all the different emotions and some very mundane and not, I'd say, not very spoken about emotions that people experience. And my collections, they can be found on my website, which is KaylaAlexander.art. And from there, they can be purchased. So, yes.
And I like the fact that you speak about being able to do things remotely or virtually and people accessing your work, because that was one of the questions. How is it that you engage with the public? How do people find you? Say, okay, well, this is what we're looking for. These are the collection, and this is the art that we can appreciate.
Well, I'm a teenager, so I utilize social media in my entire work from start to finish. I usually record the process or have progress pictures, ask people what they think it might look like, things like that. And so far, I've been showcasing my works virtually on my website. And hopefully, after the pandemic, I can have, a showcase in a gallery. But so far, it's been through social media. So my Instagram, I've been working on a TikTok account where, I post, some progress videos, videos into like insight into how my day goes as an artist. And yes, yeah.
So when you post progress pics, do people, what kind of feedback do you get? And I also want to know if the feedback that you get from people kind of determines when next you go from there.
Not necessarily. I think feedback is a part of it, and I appreciate all the constructive criticisms and the support I get. But for me, it really has no pull on, whether I paint or not or what I paint. Of course, I do take heed from other artists and people who, really have eyes for things. They think this is lopsided or I should have used a different color combination here to get this look. Some colors are missing here. I do listen and I do take it into account. I do fix it sometimes and, republish it. But I'd say, yeah, I try to balance feedback, keep it healthy so that, I keep doing what I think I need to do while listening to people around me.
That makes a great deal of sense. Now, in terms of, you spoke about inspiration towards creating your art, but you also just spoke about listening to people who have creative or constructive criticism. Who are some of the people that you look at? Are there specific individuals that you say, I like what they do, or the way that they're doing this kind of can inform something or gives me an idea, sparks something within me? Who are those people, if they are?
Um, Really, it's a multitude of people. I can't really pinpoint who exactly right now, but one person that I do take a lot of constructive criticism from is my mom. She just sees exactly where the flaw is, even though she didn't paint it. She'll be like, okay, I see this hair is crooked. And, I really listen to her and she gives good criticism when it comes to balance in my paintings. But yeah, I do look to a lot of local artists too. I do frequent galleries and museums often, just to keep informed as to, if we have any new artists on the scene. I really like to look at our talent, our local talent, and get inspired.
All right, so just before we go, remind us of your social handles and places that we can interact with you once more, please, Kayla.
My website is kaylaalexander.art, and my Instagram handle is KAYSIC_, and my TikTok, I believe, is KZander.
All right, so we want to thank you so much for the work that you're doing and stepping forward, as well as thanking your mom for giving you that support so that we can see what is happening in terms of the bright young talent of Trinidad and Tobago. And on behalf of the entire news team, I'm DK Rasta. Thank you so much for joining us.